We're Wilden, your break's over.
Anyone else asked for a break, you're like, sure, we had an anonymous. I asked for it.
Don't be ageist. Okay.
Did you just say that on recording?
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Well, I know, that wasn't what happened, just to be clear.
It's at the start of the. Okay. Yes, we're moving work session item 2.
I think I'm fine.
Mayor and council, we apologize. Our consultant notified us earlier this afternoon that he's ill and was going to be unable to attend, but we do have some preliminary information we wanted to share with you on the cemetery. We're quite excited that we've been able to get a little bit of information going on that. Jeremy's got some slides prepared that he's going to walk us through, and we can talk a little bit about kind of what we see happening in the near future on this. Jeremy, go ahead.
Does that work? Does this work? It does work. All right, well, we hired EDA Land Planning. Dan Cable unfortunately got ill and couldn't make it tonight. So I will try to answer your questions, but if not, I will pass them along and answer them later. So we asked Dan to give us a full build out. If you remembered our retreat, this was the option that you guys preferred versus the other layout. And so I don't know if you can see it. This has a phase 1 delineated. It's the black dash dot line that outlines the southern half of the project. So phase 1, he gave us a cost estimate. You can see it's about 2.2 million. And the full build out, according to his estimate, would be about 12.5 million. I apologize. I did not. I was going to add the internment counts. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
This is a work session, we can go back and forth.
Yeah.
So the 12 million, does that include the 2? So it's an additional 10?
No, it's, that's a good question. No, I believe it's the total cost. It's
10 more.
It's 10 more.
10
correct.
more, okay.
I believe so. I'll clarify that, but I would suspect 12 million also
I mean, a
already
million's
seems.
not a rounding error, so,
Right.
No, I think.
okay.
Yes, I'll verify that, but I would suspect that 12 is the total cost.
Well, if you look at the area, it makes
Right.
sense that it's 12 total.
Yeah,
Proportionally,
So phase
it's
one
about-
doesn't
it's
include the
about
office or the shop or
1.6.
yard or any of that?
Phase 1 does not include the shop and the yard. So phase 1 includes about 3,000 internment spaces. It includes about 1,000 internment for the cremation garden, and it includes the loop road. You can see it excludes the shop and yard area.
Mayor and council, just so you can see, it's
I
essentially
see.
this area right here. So you have this and this available, and then, you know, the cremation garden here. It would not include constructing the potential site. Now, you'll notice.
That's a shop and yard. I thought we didn't want that right at the entrance of the cemetery.
So what we did talk about internal, and this is something, is that if we have the office here, then people coming to look for cemetery graves and stuff, we can have an office in here where they can get information to direct them to where they can find graves and things of that nature.
Yeah, other cemeteries don't do that. They do put them in the back. They have like a little station where there's a book.
Right.
But I really don't want the ugly shop with the big tractor sitting right there.
So we were going to screen this area from a sewer standpoint.
I think it's funny. We always tell other people, all these developers, we tell them they can't just screen it.
I understand, Michael. We have a problem when we get too far away from here because the sewer line that we're going to need to hit is going to be right here. So we can do this, but we're going to be hugely increasing the cost as it relates to sewer. So this is not set in stone, obviously. It's just more for.
Well, you can still put the shop, the office and a bathroom, and you can put the tractor and the eyesore of crazy, not what people want to see. They don't want to see what's being dug to put your dead body in. They want to see that hidden. This is opposite of what we talked about.
So
I feel like it was like a waste of time the other day.
I apologize. as far as a sewer analysis, if you take that contour and if
I'm
you,
okay leaving the office there and having the bathrooms there.
Okay.
Put the shop somewhere else, and then they can just come and go to the bathroom.
would you prefer the southern or the northern? Because obviously this slopes up, right? So if you're looking north, that's up on a hill, more visible from the city. So sounds like you'd like it more in the southeastern corner.
Towards Camp Williams.
To the, yeah, totally open to what you want.
The
I'm just gonna say
southeastern corner is like
the
the
view
view
corridor,
towards
so
the
the whole
lake. I don't
north
think you
end is
wanna-
gonna be visible for more of the city, right? Because you're up on the hill.
So put it in the east,
In the south,
southeast corner, but put
The southeast
bathroom
corner is
there.
between is the view of the lake. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, we don't wanna be where the view of the lake is. I'm actually thinking the top left.
So.
Up by Camp
northwest.
Williams.
Northeast.
but that would be visible because that's sitting up on a hill.
Well, yeah, but you can put bushes and trees. I
Okay.
just don't want you driving by it.
So you'd like to leave the office here?
Yeah.
Because that's where we need the sewer for the bathrooms, but you'd like to leave the staging yard where your backhoe is stored?
Big backhoe that's digging
Okay.
a hole.
So,
Okay.
Michael, if you can kind of think of the slope on this, it's sloped this way, you'd be up on the top side, up where the shooting range is kind of the top corner, and then it slopes down to that bottom point, which is kind of about where Kayla would be.
It's actually better to have something up high because then when you do put your fence, you can't see anything in the fence if it's up high. If you have a fence and it's down low, you can look right down.
Same concept we had with Vinyl Industries. They were up high enough that their 15-foot fence covered it from the road.
Okay, we can do that.
So I'm sorry I was getting a little bit.
You're fine.
I just feel like we have all these meetings and then we're just gonna put this here because of X, Y, Z. The road stubbing there, what is that on the far right?
The far.
On the white, why is there a road in, and then it's?
Well, so as you're aware, the developer is providing us the lot layouts. This is not a phase they're actively developing. So when they come to us and they're actively playing with the lot layout, then we're gonna work with them. That will not likely be it. That's
Stupid.
right. But they're not actively working with us on this. So that's the current CAD file. It's probably, they don't have any city approvals. They haven't submitted any village plans. So it simply is a concept layout that they've had.
Sewer access is, but we don't.
And this is where we worked on, we're gonna ask them to move our access to the center because that was the road. I can jump ahead to a screen really quick. Remember, we wanted to move the access to the center because that's the direct route. So when they bring in that village plan, planning and engineering will work with them to eliminate that south stub, and it's just that they're not changing their plans
Other than
currently.
that, it looks great.
Okay,
This has more to do with operations when it's open. We've still got it so where we wouldn't be doing interments on Saturday, correct?
We could, or
A lot of cemeteries don't, but Camp Williams primarily uses their artillery ranges and stuff on Saturdays, so
yeah, sure. I mean, we can.
People visit cemeteries more on the weekend too, so
Yeah.
it's better not to have.
We can certainly
Holes in the ground.
put whatever policies in place as it relates to that. That's not a problem.
That's a good point, Jim.
yeah, I was talking to one of the mortuaries, a couple of them, and they were just saying, that's just, Saturdays are tough that way because they're more crowded. But then ours with the artillery range usage, that just makes that,
That's just a policy issue for later, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
let me jump to the next, so if you wanted to see the breakdown, this just gives you more of a detailed breakdown of where those from. So looking at phase one, you can see on the far right, you're looking at just under a
I
million.
mean, we can't see it, but
So-
we know it's there.
Do you want to, if you want to go through it, if not, I can just jump to the next.
Yeah, jump.
You're good.
I'll jump to the next slide. This one just shows we had to look at several different options for a temporary access road. Some of the initial options were very expensive because of you're cutting through a hill. So the one in red was the most cost-effective one. It comes in about a little over $300,000 is the estimate. That would be unpaved. If you wanted to pave it, I don't know why, but just for access, that would probably about double the cost.
What about like when you put the gravel and then they put the oil on it and it just sort of makes it so it's more compact, so it's not a,
Yeah, like a tackifier.
yeah.
It's not a full-on asphalt. Yes, that would be an incrementally increased.
Yeah,
So-
so maybe let's look at that too, because then it's something
Right.
that you're not like, rocks aren't hitting cars. and
Right.
stuff. It's not,
It-
it's a little less
De-
stressful.
Depending on the duration of that access road having to facilitate, it does require regular maintenance, right? It ruts and whatever,
Now,
so.
there's a good chance this is
Right.
7 years out.
So there is going to be an ongoing maintenance cost of having a non-paved road versus a paved road. As you're well aware, you drive in it.
Although this could be 7, 8 years even, because.
It could. You could pave it. If we had it for 3 years and we said it was just a headache, we could pave it.
But if it's not developed down lower and we get a heavy wet year like this year and it's an unpaved road, we could gate it to just say there's not access.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, obviously, winter's
I know that
the tough.
when you're trying to hold a funeral, that can be an impact, but there's only things.
And I wanted to just point out one thing, Michael had a very good point at our council retreat, which is we wanted to avoid the main road so that we are not in the way. Unfortunately, that first option farther to the east, that is entirely avoiding their roads. That was the most expensive option because there's literally a mountain right at that point.
It was, that first option that we looked at was about a $3 million
It
option.
was like it was a couple $1 million.
The design is horrible.
So this one does avoid their proposed roads except for one crossing there. So,
I mean, Mark, he put that road there because he wanted us.
uh,
Because why would he build a $3 million road? He should have to go there and then put the house, I mean.
right.
We found an alignment that we think is much more affordable.
That's the main point there. So, you can see the top, it's about that would be about a 20-foot wide road, which should be plenty for vehicles, maintenance vehicles. And then the other thing we looked at was the cost of bringing in an offsite pressurized irrigation line. Because obviously, even with phase one, we may not have restrooms in phase one, but we'll have landscape. So that actually, it turns out that is not a very significant cost. It's fairly inexpensive. Now, this is all predicated on the developer having built Wild Blossom, right? So we can't do any of this stuff. If you go back, he has to build Wild Blossom first, including utilities, before we can do any of this. So that just make sure that's clear. That would give us the road access and also the utilities that we could bring. So,
How far away is he from where we would want to hook in currently? I know he's drawn some infrastructure down Wild Blossom, but I don't know if he's gone past the lake.
they have currently built they've currently finalized only a few hundred feet west of Chianti, I believe. They are currently trying to finalize and record Plat R8, which takes them to Village Plan 7. I don't have the distances in my head, the lengths, but it's, the water lines are built, actually, I believe. The Zone 4 water lines are built and will soon be
Right,
online.
it's just the road isn't in yet.
But the road
right?
itself, they have not started on that westernmost section, and we don't have a timeline.
So the water line that we're building is a temporary one, and it will just come from the road that's immediately below it, straight up the hill, as it's aligning.
So in this instance, north is to the right.
Yeah,
So
but
this is twisted.
are they over a year away to get there?
No,
This is,
that
I
water
think the
line,
water's already there.
that
isn't it?
water
It's
line
just the road.
is probably this summer if it's not ready right now.
it's already built.
They still have power,
The booster station's not finished, but,
well, then we can get the trees going, that's what.
so, yeah. So that was pretty much, the information that you had. The biggest questions we had are what was the phase one cost gonna be? What was the temporary road cost gonna be? We certainly now with that direction as far as moving, disassociating the shop and the office so that the office stays there because as Mark was explaining, that is about as far downhill as we can go and still sewer.
No, I have no problem with the
So the office stays there, but if there's no sewer facilities, then the yard can go anywhere you want.
And just, I'm doing this in my head here, so does that 2.2 in phase one include the access road or no?
No, it does not.
It does
So
not
you're at
include access road.
2.5
Right.
to get us up on the site.
Although I will say
And
there's a,
400,000 of that, we throw it away.
right.
Or
Let me
more.
clarify though, there's a lot of fluff in the 2.2. You look at the breakdown here.
Okay.
He's got some just lump sums because again, we're very conceptual. So he's got 60,000 for a water connection. He's got 250,000 for a storm drain. So I hate, is it included? It's not specifically included, but I'm not
What do
sure.
we plus or minus, 30%?
Yes, generally at this stage of estimating, I would say 30% plus or minus.
So
is
it could be
typical.
30% high, it could be 30% low.
You think he's pumped a lot of fluff in it?
Well, you've got another, was it 90,000 in design fees, electrical fees? He has very little detail, so he kind
Sure.
of gives you a safe
Theoretically,
number.
how long till this could be in use?
We're, so just ballpark, we're $1 million shy at a 30% under what's shown here. So we need to come up with another $1 million. And, we could.
Pre-sell plots to come up with that million?
So you've got to remember, as Dan talked about at the retreat, the sale of the plots, they always recommend that money not go for the capital infrastructure. They recommend that money gets set aside for the perpetual maintenance fund.
Right.
And so while that is an option that we can do, we would be leaving ourselves short potentially in the perpetual maintenance fund if we're using that to build the infrastructure.
But we can
So,
always put in a thing that says that as we, over the next 5 years, we'll replenish that perpetual
The
fund.
loan to the,
It's almost like a loan. We give loans to ourselves all the time. Mark.
no, we could come up with the money if you direct us to find it. We can do that. It's just that money won't get replaced by the sale of the plots. And so like, take the whole $12 million number, or whatever that ends up being, that's not going to likely get replenished or replaced unless we build it into the plot pricing. The plot pricing typically is more just the perpetual maintenance.
Yeah.
So we are going to be
Does the-
subsidizing this, to the cost of whatever it takes to build
Has
it.
the consultant provided any projections on, I don't want to call it revenue, but our projected sales would be?
We can do that math for you. Again, we apologize he's not here. We can bring this back in 2 weeks or at our next meeting and have some additional ongoing discussions in the next work session. We can look at funding, we can look at numbers, we can try and tighten up some of these projections. Have Dan move the building and just, again, this is something that we can continue to discuss and we have time to amend the budget. Really, the question becomes, and I think this is where you're going to, Mayor, how soon can we be there? DAI is not going to have that road completed till probably the end of the summer. That's where we would take and build off of it. We could get a contractor out there earlier, we could go do site work, we could go get survey grade, we can get all of those things done, and we can have them up there working on the site as the road's being built and as other things are being built. It's just how aggressive do you want us to be in funding this and trying to get this built? And, if that's where you're at as a council, then we can do it.
we've got a city that's got the span of life cycle, and they're going to the neighboring communities for final resting places. Some of them want to be here, Michael's parents. They're residents of Saratoga, they wanted to be here, but they're in Lehigh. Yeah. And so, we're 26 years old, 27 years old.
50,000 people.
And 50,000 people,
It's time to do
probably
it.
behind the eight ball. I mean, Eagle Mountain's got one already. They're our size, our age.
Our location's better.
Yeah, it
If
is.
Nate is there, or if DAI, sorry, is there at the end of the summer, are they 2 more years to get all the way around? Is that all dependent on
This
the,
depends on the economy.
It could be 2 years, it could be 4 years, it could be 7 years, we don't know. It could be next fall, a year from now. So,
I mean, I love the plan and I agree with the tweaks to the shed. I think that needs to move. That's great. I'm concerned, our budget right now is $1 million and we're talking about spending 40% of that on a temporary road that we tear out. So I've got some concern there and I understand the urgency here.
what if we reduced phase 1, so it's the first 1,000 plots and the first 1,000 cremations? And we just do the one road that kind of loops it in?
I guess for me, that part doesn't really matter. I mean, it's money's money, but to me, I struggle, we want to rush and get this done, I understand the urgency, but it's 300,000 plus, potentially 30, it's a total throwaway. And we've never done that as a city, we're always thinking, hey, we're gonna put a little bit more here, we'll pay more because it'll save money down the road, no pun intended. But I don't have a good answer. It would be nice to expedite it without potentially throwing away 400,000 down the road.
What if we talked with Nate, our favorite person, and instead of throwing it away, we got him to put in the actual road, and we participated in it as well. Instead of throwing the money away, we actually help
But have to
expedite,
do,
subsidize, like a,
Build it to code at that point.
yeah.
well, you have to do the utilities first,
Yeah.
because the sewer and the storm drain, so otherwise you'd be digging up the road to go back and install
Yeah,
utilities.
I'm just wondering if we just have a conversation with, because he wants us to build the road anyway, so instead of throwing the money away, like Steven's saying, is maybe we do something like that. I think, Mark, to your point, you're saying the little green box and the little pink box and just doing that road, that little teeny one.
Just
looks a
look-
lot like Bluffdale's, like a really small.
And
but
that
it's
could
the
be,
first phase.
that's the first 1,000, that's 1,000 cremations and that's 1,000 burial plots.
Plenty of plots for right away. So maybe that is an option. So
And then we take our million and we use our million if that's a shortened thing. Now, again, we're still gonna have to build
We're gonna do the
the
grade for the
waterway.
whole thing.
We're gonna have to do a lot of grading, we're gonna have to do a lot of that.
Save a lot.
But, we're saving,
Okay.
the road, the interior roadway costs.
A
and other-
1,000 would get us ways down the road if it only
You
is
could do the
resident.
mass grading now without, you could go out to contract right now on the mass grading. We could pay Dan to finish the mass grading designs to a construction level for the entire property and do that now.
Well, sorry, even if we don't do the loop road, I mean, we could still grade and landscape even the larger area, the grass area that would have been part of phase one, and just save ourselves
Oh,
the
I
road
see.
cost until later.
Oh, yeah, so we can start planting the trees, get the grass
Right.
in, and
We can
then
put the
do road
grass in
later.
and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, it's-
that's a good idea.
I
Don't put the
don't
blacktop on.
suspect that the whatever that is, half acre of landscape grass is going to be that much more expensive than. I think the road is the major cost of phase one, right?
No, that's a good idea, Chris.
Let's go back. So I was able to confirm, just looking at it, it is included, right? So I can see like in phase one, it says 2 entry gates and then build out's 2 entry gates. So I can confirm that the full build out includes all of the items in phase one. You don't add them together.
Okay.
But as far as looking at phase one, the biggest cost in phase one is the grading, the drainage, all that stuff. And it's about 50-50 between the asphalt and the concrete and the landscaping. So it's about $500,000 for landscaping and $500,000 for your roads and your sidewalks.
We could cut a lot of road and sidewalk.
Let's get a meeting with Nate and just see where he's at. Let's find out.
Councilman Wilden has a thought.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we do have SIDs, and that, I think, is something that we could offer up to help him finance some of those things at a lower cost that he might be more willing to work with. Not that, I don't want to say the other dirty word, not that, what is the other one? Oh, we won't say it.
Don't say it.
Yeah, but we do have SIDs, we've used those in the past, and it could be a financing mechanism for him that might encourage him to accelerate some of the infrastructure.
He's been wanting help with that.
We can certainly reach out to him. I'm not sure where it's gonna land us, but we'll reach out to him.
Okay.
We'll try and get some more information for our next meeting. We'll get some total revenue projections as to what would be going into the perpetual fund.
Okay.
And again, we can solve problems. If you tell us that you want us to fund it, we'll certainly try and get an amendment into the budget that we have until, probably
I mean,
first part of March, or first part of May to adopt.
in the upper phase, if you're gonna put grass down, Orem did it,
It does look
you intern people in the bottom, smaller section to start with. If it's flat enough, Heston can play soccer on it for a few years. Orem did it
Yeah,
with their cemetery. Lehigh's done
Lehigh's
it,
done it.
Because
There's no bodies on
I
that.
think there's actually a pretty big slope across this. I don't
Can the
think.
Parks Fund cover it then?
What?
Get the Parks Fund to chip in.
Okay.
I do think it's worth, I mean, to avoid the throwaway money, looking at different arrangements, because it would be a benefit to the city, not just to, not under the guise of affordable housing, which all the developers talk about. It'd be under the guise to increase accessibility to these different areas. So it'd be a benefit to the city and potentially him, and give him lower costs, that then we wouldn't be throwing away 300,000 plus.
I like that idea.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank you.
That's a great idea.
thank you very much. We will get going on the sign code application.
So I apologize, I do need to step away. I have a friend who's visiting from out of town. But as I look through this, really, I'm actually really pleased to see that there's not that very many violations. And really, I'll just be very blunt, I said it earlier, we have rules and code for a reason. And so I think we just start chipping away and getting these people into compliance, because other people have been playing by the rules and they've done a great job. I mean, we have 203 complete, no issues. I mean, 188, no issues. So why do the 15, the 4, and the 14 get an unfair advantage with their marketing, with their banners and their flyers and their window decals? It's because we haven't been on as much on top of this. So I really appreciate all of the effort that went into this. I appreciate code enforcement going and doing all of this work. And because it was per my request. So I apologize, I'm going to leave. But that's just my argument is we need to enforce code, and if, as a council, we don't think some of these things, then let's sit back and revisit code, and so that code enforcement can then enforce that. So I apologize, but thank you.
It's all yours.
All right, all right. I feel special now. I don't get to come to these very often, so thanks for having me tonight. So first, I did a complete citywide audit of every building sign, drive-through sign, temporary banner, and window sign. So as you can see, the breakdown on that first sheet there, it just gives the total numbers of the signs that I've looked at and the businesses and just kind of a percentage in the numbers. The second page, the larger page, it just breaks it down. We've intentionally omitted any business names or anything. This is just to give you an idea of what's out there. So if the very first column on the left side is any of the building signs that I noticed that had whatever the issue was. When I say building sign, I'm talking about the permanent building signs, the light up signs, that kind of thing, the larger ones that you see. And it ranges in severity anywhere from missing lenses on installed signs where the bulbs are exposed to they don't have any approvals at all. They just kind of went wild with it and did what they wanted to do. The next and stop me if you have any questions about any of these in particular ones. The next column there is window signs. There's a lot of those, to be quite honest. I don't think it's very well known, or at least it wasn't very well known. The word has gotten out. So these are window signs that they actually place on the windows themselves. A lot of times they use them for, instead of putting blinds or shades, they're actually perforated, a lot of them, so. Yeah, kinda. So if you get up close to it, you can see through them, but say the road or the sidewalk, it acts more as a wall. In certain cases, I think they're a good idea. Dance studios, workout studios, that kind of thing, to give extra privacy, but they don't really need them. You can use blinds, you can use shades. There are other alternatives to what they're doing. And what it ends up becoming is just another big billboard for them. So you have your building sign, maybe a monument sign out front in addition. Then they plaster these things right on their windows, and they, now above and beyond, now they've got, a 20 by 40 billboard on the side of their building advertising for them. And that is strictly prohibited to a certain percentage of the window, or excuse me, not prohibited, restricted to a certain percentage of the window itself. And it's 20%. And there was a lot of discussion about the city code. We've had lots of staff meetings about this. So the 20% rule is a bank of windows. So if you look at certain businesses, they might have 3 to 6 windows and they're kind of, all together. So we consider that one window as for the 20% rule. The only time that gets separated by our city code is when there's a distance of 12 inches or more between them. So if you look behind you, the windows that are directly behind you, the window over here would be a separate window. You could cover that 20%. The 2 windows in the middle, because they're separated by less than 12 inches, those are considered one window as for the code, just for some clarification. Temporary, sorry.
There's been some discussion of people saying, well, I'll just get a blind then that has a sign on it. And we said that it's probably not gonna meet code items. So it's the intent of what we're trying to do, which is to narrow the intent of that. Now, if you choose to change that, if you want to change that, that's certainly something that could be done legislatively for the
Yeah, just going through this process, I've heard a lot of different, well, what about this? How about, can I do that? Just like what Mark was saying. And it really just comes down to, they're using it as a sign, regardless if it's a blind or if it's an actual sticker placed on the window, or it's a sign, as per our code. So, temporary sign, the next column there in the center.
Before you go on, I mean, I agree in the code, yes, blinds are technically a sign, But I think we need to revisit the code. To me, that's just getting stupid. We're saying you can't hang blinds with certain colors in your window. I think you're doing what you're supposed to. I'm not being critical of that. I just think our code's stupid. We're being like too restrictive. We're nitpicking on things. That's like saying Wheelman's mowing, if I put a blind in my house and it's big, like I violated sign code, and I think that's a load of crap. We're like going into people's residents at this point and we're legislating too much.
So I can't pontificate that eloquently,
A load of crap, you can say that.
but I, as another member of the council, would like to revisit our sign code and spend some time looking what our neighbors are doing. South Jordan, Linden, some of those cities. I just know that as our borders are shared with other cities, it is very easy for businesses to go to our neighbors and have a little more flexibility. And if they're a quarter of a mile over here or a quarter of a mile over there, and we don't get the tax revenue because we're too restrictive, we need to look at this. We need to be more business friendly. We claim to be business friendly, and we need to start standing behind that a little bit, I think. And if we're being overly restrictive, then we need to look at that. I really appreciate everything that went into this, and we really didn't find that many violators, frankly. Now, the ones that are in violation, I don't want to go out and start shutting businesses down because they've got a sign out of compliance. Let's work with them and get them into compliance, but I don't want us to be out there
Well, I
finding
think
people.
before we go out and start, if we're gonna open the sign code up and look,
Yeah.
some of these, maybe we shouldn't do anything until we know what the new code
Until we
looks
know what
like.
we're gonna look, yeah, until we know what we're gonna do, exactly.
Some of them are obvious, like there you have bulbs exposed. I think you've done phenomenal work.
Yes.
To be clear, my load
Been
of
great.
crap was not in relation to anything you're doing. It just really bothers me that like, as a homeowner, if I don't have a license to run a business in my home, if someone came by, you had a sign behind your window and it was too big, blind, same thing. That's not allowed. And to me, that's just, our code, if it's going into that level, it's wrong on every fiber of my being is saying that that's wrong.
So just for clarification, I did not peek in anybody's windows at their
Oh,
house.
I'm not suggesting you
No, I
did.
didn't do
I'm
any-
just,
So this was strictly just the commercial business.
right, but, no, I know, but it's the same thing on commercial, and you brought up a really good point, is like, hey, if they turn blinds, or if they set a poster board behind their window 2 feet, well, okay, they can't do that. I mean, I think our code is structured so it's silly and restrictive to businesses of what happens.
Having talked with some friends, people I know, associates at Colliers and that, right along with what Chris Karn said, we're trying to get some of these regional draws. You've got Walmart 2.5 miles up the road from us putting in a super center from our Walmart. That creates regional draw at Eagle Mountain. If they're more flexible, that becomes appealing because we will drive there. Just like Eagle Mountain will drive to our Home Depot. We've driven to American Fork and cursed for how many years on Pioneer Crossing. So, I mean, I agree with Councilman Karn, Councilman Wilden, what you're saying. We've got to open that up and look and say, how do we compare to our neighboring cities?
In addition to that, I mean, we've had national franchises come in and they're like, our sign has been allowed everywhere else except for here.
In the United States. but
Yeah.
here.
And so there's issues with that. I would like to see, as we revisit this as well, is more of what is our design intent and goal before we get into the nitpicking of the code? Because I think it's just, there's too much individual opinions that have been put into the code over the years, that there's not really a uniform, like, this is why we're doing this.
And just to be clear too, as far as code enforcement goes, they're all violations currently, right? I mean, they're all a violation, some more severe than others. I do currently have 2 violations, and they're listed here, that I have current notice of violations on, because they've been given the nice, hey, can you please take care of this? Gone through that whole process. They've refused to do anything or communicate, so it's gone to the next few stages here. So there are two currently.
Which ones are those?
It's about halfway down your page.
Before I know what specific one, can I just make a comment? What I would find unfortunate to the mayor's comment is if to remediate whatever one this is a significant cost to the business, and it's something that we may change and allow later on, I think that's really unfortunate.
So.
If
so-
it's like a don't say which one it is yet, and relate, if it's a temporary banner, whatever, you know.
Right,
but-
so there is one temporary banner, and the business names are not listed here intentionally.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to slip and say that accidentally. So one is a temporary banner. They were given the same treatment I treat everybody. Went and spoke with the manager, reached out to him, did the whole process, and they just refused to do anything about it. We're just gonna forget about it. That one has been up on the side of the building for more than 6 months. And they just refused to take care of it. The other, and that one's about a quarter of the way down the page. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like the ninth one down.
I don't know where the rest of the council's on this, but I don't know that that's one of the ones I'm all that worked up about changing. I agree with the other council members that I think this bears looking at, but I think it's more about the window signage and the number of signs and placement and stuff like that. The overall sign code, the temporary banners, I think is probably where we want it already.
When I look at the code, and most of you won't know this, but I was a firefighter and a paramedic for a number of years in my hometown in Michigan. When I see the window signs, to me, that screams public safety issue. Because if I can't see what's in there, I don't know what I'm walking into. You know, whether it's a firefighter, a paramedic, a police officer. So, I mean, a blind, I mean, you can say that for anything, blinds, window shades, anything. If they pull them, you can't see what's in there. But with the stickers particularly, I don't have a chance. You know, the blinds could be open. I know what I'm going into. With those things, I don't like them for that reason.
Mayor, council, on the enforcement side of it, I would say that those two cases.
Mark, I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Those two cases that are active enforcement, my recommendation to you would be, we continue with that process and you not interject anything into those processes. To your point, Mayor, I don't believe these are things that would probably, be corrected. And if you'd like to, discuss it offline, we'd be happy to have that conversation. But from an enforcement standpoint, it's never good, to be respectful of your position, to be directing us from the dais on how to enforce the code that's been written. So I would say on those two things, we're going to continue. But as far as strict enforcement on anything else, we're going to put a pause while you look at the code and come forward with it. What I think I've heard very clearly tonight is 5 of you have said, we want to go back and look at our sign code. My question to you as a council would be, would you like to assign 1 or 2 council members to start working with staff? How would you like us to identify the problem so that we can go in and bring you this? How would you like to approach this as far as, do you want us in a work session? How would you like us to start, attacking whatever changes or things that you'd like us to respond to?
It's up to the mayor, obviously, but my suggestion is we don't have a separate committee. We used to do that years ago, and it was a terrible idea.
Okay.
Not from the staff.
You don't get really the voice of the council on,
What?
if it's a separate committee, you don't really get the voice of the council.
Yeah, and there's gonna be significant Karn's all arguing with everything I say, so, I think it'd just be good, you guys come with some proposals versus what other cities are doing.
I think before
Yeah,
it comes to the council, we could get information like, let's get Doug, who's with our economic development. Let's get code enforcement. Maybe let's reach out to some commercial brokers and just say, hey, when they got the pulse on it. When we're down in Vegas at this thing, they know what their businesses need, what their requirements are. They need this signage, they need this, or they're not interested. Let's get some information. How do we compare to our neighbors? And then let's bring it back to the council as all 5.
Okay, that's great. We can do that in a work session.
Mayor,
was
to
that?
your point, I mean, we had one of the brokers in here arguing against a request for more flexibility in the sign code because they said it's not necessary, you know? They understand what is and isn't necessary for the businesses, and they understand when businesses are trying to just get everything they can, and when it's, you know, important for their ability to conduct business in our city. So I think getting that input would be key, but I agree. I think we need to have it out as a whole council because there's obviously a difference of opinion amongst some of us.
We have some things that are obviously broken. I talked to a business that opened recently, and we've talked about this. They've been building for 8 months to a year, and a few days before they opened, or a month before they opened, they put up a now hiring sign. And they were told to take it down because they didn't have a permit for it. We got to change that. I mean, they're encouraging hiring jobs in our community. And I understand that sign needs to follow a certain regulation, but those kind of things need to be in their original permitting. So that when they file for their permit, they don't need to come back and get another permit first for that sign. And that's just
brand
one
business?
example. It's just one example. But I'm all for looking at our sign code holistically.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and again, please, I just want to make sure that we charge the right direction.
Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. And I'm not advocating for selective enforcement. If it's our code today, we need to follow our code today.
So I'm hearing, look at some of the other cities as what they're doing, reach out to some brokers and some businesses and find out what specifically we may need to look into. Obviously, there's some, professional recommendations that probably are coming out of the American Planners Association and other things. We can look at those kinds of things. To be fair, there's a spectrum of sign and permissiveness. You've got Times Square, you've got Las Vegas.
Sure.
It's probably not our scale. You've probably got,
And I
some
don't
very.
think Genola is, but our direct competitors.
Right. So take a look at the surrounding communities. We probably don't want to end up like, certain areas on State Street.
I don't want to traverse Mountain Billboard.
And we still don't want
Commerce.
billboards, correct?
No.
So I think that's giving us some scope. Sarah,
Like
this is going to
The
fall.
discussion, Mark, was with the gas station signs. The digital ones, they work better, they're modern.
Mm-hmm.
If we make them small, people stop to look and they drive like this. If they're big enough, you can read them at a glance, like the neighboring cities. They
Just
work
what's the
well.
standard? What's the
But our code puts in the garbage that's been broken at Maverick for months.
Yes.
We need to look at that.
Okay.
Well, and I mean, the fact is that marketing and businesses are constantly innovating. The world is changing. New technology is coming up. New opportunities are coming up. And we need to accommodate that rather than saying, we're going to make sure that our code fits how business was done 20 years ago. Retail is not what it was 20 years ago. We need to recognize that reality.
Yeah, I did have I just want a little bit more feedback on and we're happy to bring forward whatever direction we get. I want a little bit more feedback on the window signs. We do require 50% windows on some of our facades and 35% windows on some of our other facades. And so what's happening, what we're seeing is those facades that face Redwood are not the primary entrance on the back and near the parking lot. And then, so if 35% of the facade is a window, we're seeing 100% coverage of that. So those end up being quite large. And that's what we're seeing right now with the window coverage all over the place. And so our code right now says 20%. We can certainly proceed with enforcing that. However, if we're going to be bringing that one back to you, maybe we start with a work session on things that everyone would like to see changed.
I think, Sarah, we could keep the 20%, but maybe look at 12 inches between windows creates one window.
I think she's
Yeah, we
pointing
have
to an
that now.
architectural
If-
standard, though, not a sign standard. The architectural standard that requires massive glass on a building in our commercial zone, which we wanted to do to create more open business and to create a more open environment, it had a spin-off effect, which was that was back of house for most businesses, and they wanted to block those windows off so that they could, it's facing the street, but that's not, their business is facing the parking lot
Yep.
as an entrance. And so that's an architectural standard that's driving the issue that we're starting to see. And so perhaps
I think
there's
it
other
needs
ways
to-
that we need to address this.
Holistically.
Well, I don't think when we wrote that into the code, we meant for it to be 35% of the facade to be a sign. And that's what it's turning into.
And there's a couple things that I think we can bring some ideas back on. I do have a question. We're talking about the brick and mortar building signage. We're not talking about the snipe signs that people throw on the side of the road. We're not talking about kind of the guerrilla marketing that sometimes happens in the community. Those things you want to keep restricting.
Keep those restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking specifically, more of the building facade, those kinds of things.
Commercial business.
Commercial businesses that are here, not just people trying to locate, workers from home or something like that.
On-site signage is, I guess, not, off-site signage needs to continue to be enforced.
I like the mayor's point about our comparable cities, looking around, like, making sure it's real comparable cities. We talk about like Park City. They're not a comparable city, and we don't want to be a city where we're just not that city where you can drive everywhere and can't figure out where anything is. I mean, there's certain parts in there. I just offended Mark because that's his old city.
It's not my city. I live there, I work there, it's a beautiful city. But
No,
it's,
and I'm not being critical of them, but we need to look at where the draw is around us, and I don't think we're ever gonna be.
Well, let's look at
Like a-
comparable
What's
cities
the
and,
draw for a city on the Silicon Slopes?
Yep.
Not the ski slopes, Silicon.
yeah,
Yep.
let's look at northern Utah County and southern Salt Lake County, comparable size, and see what they're doing.
okay. We will bring some preliminary discussion back for you at our next council meeting. We'll start planning regularly scheduled work session meetings, and we'll bring some stuff back and start talking the conversation in our next meeting.
Okay,
Work session at the end of the council meeting work for you?
that works, perfect.
We can let the crowds move on?
Okay. With that, do we have need for closed session?
Not tonight.
Can we do one personnel
Absolutely.
item? Okay,
No, yeah,
I'll entertain a motion to go to.
So made.
Quick closed session. I have a
Second.
first and a
Aye.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Uh,
Okay,